You're standing in front of one of the most unusual restaurants in San Myshuno, all glass curves and shimmering light, as if it rose straight out of the ocean itself. It's the kind of place where your Sims might come for a first date, or gather friends around the piano for a night they'll never forget. But who on earth built it? And why did they design it like this? Well, that's what we're about to find out. San Myshuno is buzzing with stories of this place and its creative but mysterious founder. Some say it was built by a Sim with Sulani heritage to honor summer memories spent with grandparents who have now passed. Others believe it was the dream of a weary architect, desperate for life beyond soulless skyscrapers. And a few whisper that it was a San Myshuno local who finally had the means to create a place where everyone could feel at home. Whoever he was, he poured his soul into this place, leaving little surprises for anyone curious enough to notice. Over the course of this video, we'll discover the stories of 3 possible founders: the memory keeper, the burnt out architect, and the local boy done good. If you'd like, type 1, 2, or 3 into the comments to vote for the story you think best fits this build. You're very welcome to just share the numbers, or if you'd like, you can share a little more. I always love to hear your thoughts. You might notice little details hinting at the soul of whoever dreamed this place into existence. A photo wall of sunlit summers, or a tucked away sketchbook full of design drafts perhaps. Either way, this isn't just a restaurant. It's a living story. Behind its glass walls, each space has its own magic. The welcoming, beachy entrance, the deep ocean bar, the floating dining room with its breathtaking horizon view, the buzzing coral reef kitchen where the scent of fresh seafood fills the air. Imagine your Sims wandering through these spaces, pausing at the bar in the shadowy depths, drifting past the open kitchen to watch the chefs at work. And finally, rising into the dining room where every meal comes with a magical view. For now, wander with me through the restaurant itself, explore the spaces, imagine the Sims you'd bring, and keep your eyes peeled for tiny details left behind by the person who poured their heart into every curve and corner. And if you'd like to make sure you're here for the next course, just hit like and subscribe, and your seat will be ready and waiting for you each time you come back. Now, as I'm creating the shell of this building, I couldn't help but feel like I was standing in its founder's shoes. Can you imagine the hours he must have spent shaping this roof? There were definitely some challenging moments with the placement and making sure every panel of glass was perfectly angled to make everything seem smooth and seamless and catch the light. I think our founder, whoever he was, wanted each curve to feel like a wave frozen in time. And I found myself turning the panels again and again, and then stepping back to see how it looked and how it caught the sunlight. And if you're thinking, oh yes, I'd love to create something like this, but I'm not sure how, just drop me a comment below. I'm always more than happy to answer questions or explain any part of the process. And actually, here's a little tip that I discovered whilst working on this build. And it's something I think could be really fun for anyone wanting to try a similar project. And that is, don't feel like you have to stick to just one type of glass wall. For this restaurant, I decided to blend 2 different patterns. So we have the plain glass and we have that honeycomb glass. And honestly, the results were even better than I could have imagined. And I think it works so well because in some areas, the honeycomb adds soft, dappled shadows that dance across the room like sunlight through waves. And at other times, it made me think about the scales of a fish. In other areas, the plain glass, it almost seems to disappear, and it creates that magical, is it really there kind of vibe. Those moments where you have to pause and look twice. So in this particular build, I combined 2 glass wall patterns and 1 glass roof pattern. But I think in future builds, we could definitely experiment with 3 or more, and I would love to see where that takes us. Here though, I loved how that combination reminded me of currents in clear ocean water. It almost felt shimmering and alive. And I think the best part is how this little trick guided the story of the build, and even hinted at the personality of the person who might have imagined this building in the first place. So, on that note, let's dive into the story of our first possible founder, the Memory Keeper. This sim, he's not a flashy mogul or a brash entrepreneur. He's quiet, thoughtful, and the kind of sim who gets lost sketching waves onto a napkin while sipping tea. He carries a gentle nostalgia wherever he goes, and the story of this restaurant starts far away in Sulani. Perhaps one of his parents or maybe a grandparent grew up there. So Sulani wasn't just a vacation spot for him. It was a place where memories were made, where laughter and the scent of the ocean became woven into family life. After a difficult season, maybe the loss of this person he loved, he returned to those turquoise waters like a pilgrim seeking comfort. The waves, the sunlight dancing on the ocean, the quiet rhythm of the tides, they healed him gently, like a song he didn't realize he needed. And as he stood there on the shores of Sulani, sketchbook in hand, he realized that he wanted to share this sense of peace with others. Not for vanity and not to impress, but as a gift. A place where other Sims could step inside and feel a little of that ocean magic, even if they had never been to the islands themselves. The Memory Keeper dreamed of a space where a city dweller could pause, watch the sunlight shimmer through glass, and let their worries drift away like shells carried on the tide. Every design choice in this restaurant whispers that story. The glass curves, the sweeping waves of the roof, and the flowing shapes of the walls aren't just about beauty. They're memory made of material. Each panel catches the light like the sun on the ocean. Each shimmer and reflection is a gentle echo of his time in Sulani. And if you wander through the coral reef kitchen or the deep ocean bar, you might catch little nods to the life he carried with him. Subtle colors, patterns reminiscent of shells, or even tiny keepsakes tucked into corners that invite curious eyes to pause and wonder. He's a quiet character, the kind who might serve a few dishes himself, ensuring that the freshest seafood is sourced sustainably. The Memory Keeper cares about the world around him, and that sense of stewardship bleeds into every corner of the restaurant. Partnerships with local fishers, eco-conscious energy choices, and even small gestures like composting or encouraging patrons to leave less waste. It's not showy, it's just who he is. Every detail matters because he knows the earth matters. And yet, for all his humility, there's a playful side to his storytelling through architecture. He loves tiny surprises. A little corner where Sims can watch the waves play across the floor, or a counter adorned with shells and stones. It's a kind of quiet magic. Grief transformed into beauty, memories honored, spaces that soothe and invite reflection. Every panel, every curve, every shimmer is meant to offer comfort, wonder, and a gentle pause from a busy world. Can you imagine him sitting quietly at one of the tables, a cup of tea or a glass of wine in hand, quietly watching a group of Sims delight at the dappled light or gasp at the view of the horizon from the floating dining room? The joy of the moment isn't for him to take credit. It's to share. It's a ripple spreading outwards, like the ocean currents that first inspired him. It's generosity embodied. That's the essence of the Memory Keeper. Humble, thoughtful, dreaming not just for himself, but for the community, giving a little piece of Sulani to everyone who walks through these doors. And if you wander through this restaurant in your own game, maybe you'll spot his gallery wall, containing beloved snaps of his time snorkeling in Sulani's sparkling waters. His favorite memories, and a nod to the place he loves. If the story of the Memory Keeper has touched your heart, you can type 1 into the comment section below. So that's our first of 3 possible founders, the Memory Keeper. A sim whose life, memories, and quiet generosity shape every corner of this glass wonder. Soon, we'll meet the burnt-out architect, whose story could not be more different, but is still every bit as compelling. Before we get there, I wanted to invite you to share your thoughts on the new upcoming Adventure Awaits expansion pack, since the trailer came out just earlier this week. What were your first impressions? I think for me, the things I would be most excited about are the new vacation spots. There was a shot in the trailer of a jellyfish cave, it looked like. And it was just sparkling. It was so magical. It also seems like we're going to get quite a few new fun activities. Kayaking, for example, is one that looks like it could be quite fun. And potentially a lot of new activities for kids as well, which is quite exciting because I think that's one age group which has maybe been a bit lacking in the past. Let me know if you agree with that. It looked like maybe they were able to make and throw paper aeroplanes and take part in archery, even shooting apples off each other's heads. I don't know if that would be a good idea in real life, but in The Sims, maybe it could be fun. Another thing that could potentially be exciting is it sounds like we might be getting a new lot type, getaway venues, and I've heard some speculation in the community that this might be hinting at hotels. I don't want to get anyone excited because I really don't know whether we'd be able to create functional hotels on this lot. I'm not sure, but doesn't getaway venue sound like it could potentially be a synonym for hotel? And one nostalgic treat or terror for anyone who played The Sims 3, depending on how you look at it, imaginary friends are back. I don't know about you, I always found them a little bit scary, but I guess we'll see how they've been reimagined in this new expansion pack. So I'd love to hear from you too. Are you excited about this expansion pack? If not, why not? And if so, what kind of adventures are your Sims dreaming of? And here's a playful little question for you. If I were to build a getaway venue in a future video, what kind of build would you like to see? I'm always so inspired by your ideas and your stories. So if you have any suggestions, just let me know. And speaking of stories, that made me think about our next founder, the burnt out architect. His story is very different from the memory keepers, but still a fascinating possibility. A sim who was ready to leave behind the rigid world of architecture and rediscover joy in creating something truly personal. Our architect wasn't always burnt out, of course. There was a time when he loved the clean lines, the precise angles, and the endless possibilities that a blank blueprint offered. He thrived in the world of high-rise buildings, corporate projects, and ambitious deadlines. But over time, the structure and order that had once inspired him began to feel confining. Every building looked the same, every office tower mirrored the one across the street, and slowly, quietly, that spark that had drawn him to architecture began to dim. It wasn't just the work itself. It was the pace of city life, the constant push for bigger, faster, taller. He began to realize that in chasing perfection for others, he had lost sight of what brought him joy. Sketches that used to make him lose track of time now gathered dust on his desk. He missed the playful curiosity that had once defined his creativity. So, one morning, after another sleepless night poring over floor plans, he made a decision. He would step away. Not forever, but long enough to remember why he loved creating in the first place. He left behind the predictable, the profitable, and the impersonal, and set out to find inspiration in the world around him, in places where he could reconnect with his own imagination. He traveled, of course, seeking beauty and quiet moments. Some days were spent wandering the cobblestone streets of Windenburg's old town, capturing the way sunlight spilled across the uneven rooftops. Other days, he found inspiration in nature, strolling along the sparkling beaches of Sulani, watching the gentle sway of palm trees, the curve of the shoreline, or the pattern of coral in the tide pools at the island dive. Slowly, he remembered that architecture wasn't just about walls and roofs. It was about stories and about how spaces could make Sims feel something: calm, delight, wonder, and how each corner could carry the memory of a journey, both imagined and real. And it was on one of these quiet journeys, notebook full of sketches and half-formed ideas, that the concept for this restaurant began to take shape. He wanted something personal, something playful, something that could exist outside the corporate world he had left behind, a place that told a story through its design. Curves that weren't just structural, colors that evoked the sea, spaces that encouraged exploration and wonder. Every detail had to feel alive, not dictated by a client's checklist or city regulations, but by a sense of joy, rhythm, and imagination. He was meticulous, of course. The architect's eye never fully goes away, but there was a new softness in his process. He let light guide him rather than deadlines. He experimented, tore things down, moved walls and windows until they felt right. The process was messy, playful, and deeply satisfying. In a way, he was rediscovering childhood magic, the thrill of building without rules, of crafting something that made others smile simply because they existed. Unlike the memory keeper who was inspired by nostalgia and heritage, the burnt-out architect focused on experience. Every sim who wandered through these glass walls should feel welcome to pause, explore, and find a corner that delighted them. It was about joy in the moment, about how the space could shape memory and play, not just aesthetics. Benches laid out in sunlit-soaked areas, nooks with unexpected shadows, places where a curious sim might linger and feel transported. These were his priorities. There's almost a meditative quality to his work. You can imagine him standing back after a long day, watching sunlight scatter across the curving glass panels, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He's not looking for accolades or social recognition, just the simple joy of creating a space that feels alive, a building that tells a story without saying a word. And in doing so, he remembered why he became an architect in the first place. To shape moments of wonder, to craft spaces that carry meaning. As you explore this restaurant in your game, maybe you'll notice the subtle cues of his personality. The playful curves of the ceiling, the unexpected angles, the places where Sims can just relax and enjoy. Maybe you can spot his sketchbook somewhere in this build, left tucked away somewhere unassuming, waiting to be discovered. Everything is intentional, and yet somehow it feels spontaneous, as if the building itself were breathing. This is a space shaped by someone who has rediscovered their dreams, their joy, and their ability to create for the sheer love of it. The burnt-out architect's journey is one of renewal, reminding us that sometimes stepping away from structure allows for the most profound creativity. If the journey of the burnt-out architect inspired you, or made you think about spaces your Sims might love to wander, type 2 into the comment section. Maybe in the future we could create another build inspired by this Sim. And as we leave the world of the burnt-out architect and wander towards our next possible founder, I can't help but think about how these journeys really shaped the restaurant itself. Honestly, it's like the building has absorbed a little bit of each Sim's soul. Maybe a pinch of nostalgia here and a dash of daydream there. So here's my vision inspired by their stories. As we step inside, the journey begins. The ground floor welcomes you in with the beach, sand underfoot, palm trees swaying, and tropical plants from Sulani thriving in the glass-enclosed space. This next moment was inspired by a recent experience of mine. My husband and I went for a walk in an area that we hadn't been to before. There were restaurants and bars, and we looked in the windows and talked about which ones we might want to try, and suddenly we came across a nondescript black door. No windows, nothing to give away what was going on inside. And it was honestly the most intriguing thing. It made you wonder, it made you ask questions. And for that reason alone, we went inside and we were transported from a bright sunny day to a dark enclosed area. And the transition was just magical. So that's what I tried to do here. Our Sims are going to pass through this door and suddenly it's a whole different world. And in here, I was going for deep sea vibes. Dark and maybe a little glamorous with hints of blue and wave-inspired lighting that makes you feel like you've just plunged into the ocean. It's intimate and yes, it's perfect for grabbing a drink while you wait for your table. Ascending the staircase, you arrive in what I'm calling the coral reef, the sparkling shallows. The atmosphere here feels completely different. Light floods the space through the glass walls, creating this playful, dappled effect that makes you feel like you're swimming in the ocean. The communal chef stations are one of my favorite touches. Diners can watch the magic happen, chat with each other, and maybe make some new friends. I also included some more lounge seating up here to give our Sims the opportunity to perch with their drink and to soak it all in. And I thought this would be essential if you're anything like me and you just need a moment sometimes to appreciate all the little details. Finally, the top floor offers an elevated, almost floating perspective. It's meant to evoke the infinite Sulani sky with breathtaking views across the water, making it a highly coveted spot for a special night. I can't lie, I can imagine a few of my Sims struggling to get a reservation here. I also like to imagine how our burnt out architect stayed up late into the night, sketching and turning ideas over in his head, wondering how to make this space truly float. Maybe he pondered how strong the glass would need to be, how it could let the light pour through while still holding up the whole dining area, almost like a little piece of engineering magic. I wanted to try and create something that wasn't just a restaurant. It was a voyage through design and feeling and little surprises waiting to be discovered. And as we turn the page to our next founder, you'll see how his own story flows through the very spaces we've just wandered together, just waiting for Sims and dreamers alike to notice. So now let's meet our final possible founder, the local boy done good. Unlike the memory keeper whose heart was full of nostalgia, or the burnt out architect who sought beauty in rediscovery, this is the story of a Sim who grew up in San Myshuno, quietly dreaming before finally finding the means and the courage to create something extraordinary for his city. He wasn't born into wealth, and he wasn't celebrated for his brilliance at a young age. Instead, he learned the value of community, of shared spaces where people could gather, laugh, and feel at home. You can imagine him as a child, wandering the streets of his neighborhood with a small harmonica tucked into his pocket, softly tapping rhythms on railings and benches as he went. Music became his companion and his way of noticing the world. The patter of rain on cobblestones, the waves lapping against the docks, the hum and chatter of the market stalls. The rhythm of the city helped him see that even the smallest details of a place could carry beauty and meaning. As he grew older, he stayed close to his home, focusing on the corners of San Myshuno that others overlooked. There was one plot in particular, down by the docks, a run-down, neglected space that everyone else seemed to ignore. Rusted shipping crates leaned haphazardly, weeds grew between the cracks in the pavement, and the faint smell of brine and old fish hung in the air. Most Sims walked by without a second thought, but to him, this plot spoke. He could see its potential even under the grime and decay. He imagined it bursting with life, light, and community, exactly the kind of place that could lift spirits and bring people together. Slowly, he began to dream. What if he could take this unloved place and transform it into something that inspired wonder, connection, and joy? What if he could create a restaurant that wasn't just a building, but a journey? A story of hope and renewal, rooted in the city he loved. This is where the journey of the restaurant and his own story intertwine. The ground floor, with its sunny beach entrance, sand underfoot, palms and tropical plants, speak to his joy in discovery and openness to new experiences. It's playful and welcoming, just like the Sim he once was. Tucked behind the unassuming black door is the deep sea bar area, intimate, cozy, and dramatic. This space reflects the heart of his transformation, the late nights spent planning and shaping the space with careful attention to the acoustics. Music here is subtle, ambient, echoing the pulse of the city he once wandered. Guests can feel the rhythm of the docks and the waves, quietly listening to the story of a neighborhood reclaimed. Ascending the staircase, you emerge into the coral reef, the sparkling shallows. This level embodies his desire to create community. Chef stations and communal seatings aren't just design choices, they're invitations. Invitations to gather, witness creation in real time, and connect with other Sims. And here sits the piano, a nod to his lifelong love of music. Once a week, he plays for diners, letting melodies ripple across the glass walls and the water below. A reminder that creativity and community go hand in hand. The dappled sunlight through the honeycomb glass adds magic, creating a playful, shimmering effect, as if the city itself danced along. Finally, the top floor, almost floating in the sky, is the most personal space of all. The sweeping views of the docks and the city remind visitors of his journey. A local boy who once walked through the neglected streets, carrying music in his pocket, now creating a space where dreams can flourish. He didn't build a destination. He built a story, a journey that invites everyone who steps through these glass walls to become part of it. In many ways, this founder's story is about giving back. He could have built something purely for prestige, but instead he restored, uplifted, and transformed. Each level tells a part of his own story, each design choice reflecting who he was, what he cherished, and how much he loves his city. And that once neglected plot on the docks that sparked it all. I'm curious, which of these founder stories feels most alive to you? You can type 1 for the memory keeper, 2 for the burnt out architect, or 3 for the local boy done good in the comments. If you'd like to bring your Sims here and let them experience it for themselves, I'll put it on the gallery as The Wave. And you can also find all of my creations by searching for the hashtag SimsBuildsChill. If you've enjoyed today's journey through the shimmering streets of San Myshuno, you might also love this eco-barn conversion. Another story-rich space where care, creativity, and cozy details transform a once-forgotten place into a spot that's full of life, magic, and possibility.